of Donald Trump, maybe we're getting used to international politics delivering the unexpected. Nonetheless, the political career of my guest today is still breathtakingly bizarre. Mikhail Saakashvili served 2 terms as president of Georgia. He then abandoned his home country to take citizenship in Ukraine, serving as a regional governor until he fell out spectacularly with the Ukrainian president. Now he's been stripped of Ukrainian citizenship and is stateless. So is this the end of Mikhail Saakashvili's political career? Mikhail Saakashvili in Warsaw. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you for inviting me, Stephen.
I have to ask you, why on earth are you in the Polish capital? Is it because as a stateless person you have no home and you really don't know where to go?
Well, I have home. I have home certainly in Ukraine. That's my permanent place of residence. And I still have home in Georgia. I'm here because I was invited by my Polish friends after this decision of Poroshenko. And I'm here because it's close to Ukraine, and because from here I'm planning my return to Ukraine, which I had announced that I would take place on 10th of September. And we need to deal with a number of organizational aspects of that, the whole enterprise.
Well, yes, very polite way of putting it, organizational aspects. The truth is, if you go back to Ukraine on the 10th of September, as you say you will, I can only imagine you'll be detained as an illegal entrant into the country, because you don't have any right to be in Ukraine. You've been stripped of your passport and your citizenship.
Well, first of all, I have full legal right, even if one considers that I'm a stateless person, which obviously is a very debatable thing. But even if I'm a stateless person in Ukraine, and stateless persons in Ukraine, under the Ukrainian constitution, enjoy all the rights of all the human rights inside Ukraine. That's first. But second, it's the whole way how they did it, you know, quite unprecedented. That I was on my private trip to the United States. President Poroshenko waited for me to leave, summoned changed the commission, added their new members and more loyal to him, and without any prior notification, without any public hearings or any kind of hearings, in a very secret manner, they stripped me of citizenship in violation of Ukrainian constitution, in violation of 1961 Convention on reducing this.
Yeah, the problem is you broke the rules.
So it's illegal, and I'll go back to Ukraine to fight for my rights in the court.
Well, yes, you might have your day in court, I suppose, but let's go through this by stages. Will you accept that you broke the rules? You didn't, when you signed all the forms, filled the forms in for Ukrainian citizenship, you didn't declare that you were under criminal investigation in Georgia, and you should have done according to Ukrainian law.
Well, certainly it's not true. First of all, I declared everything, and I'm now demanding that I should get all the documents which I filled, because they published some document on which there is my fake signature, and even Prosecutor General of Ukraine, in the conversation with journalists, recognized that it's a fake signature, because he knows well me and he knows my signatures, because I happened to award him with medals when I was president of Georgia, something like that. So and this wasn't even my signature, but even that had been true, which is not true. Ukraine's president has no right to deprive Ukraine's citizens of citizenship. It is just forbidden, because especially when you don't have any other citizenship. And they are used to the fact that many people in Ukrainian parliament, in Ukrainian politics, among Ukrainian oligarchs, basically almost everyone has other countries' citizenships. They never deprived them of anything. They just went after me because there was clearly political motivation.
Okay,
and it had nothing to do. And with regards to those so-called criminal cases in Georgia, with regards to those criminal cases in Georgia, let me finish that. Ukraine's Prosecutor General twice wrote back to Georgians prosecutors saying it's purely a political matter. There is no legal substance to criminal matters investigation in Georgia, and Ukraine refused officially to recognize them on 2 occasions.
Yeah, well, let's hang on. I'm going to stop you because it's complex, and I'm trying to simplify it for our audience. But the fact is, going back to 2007, when you were president of Georgia, it is now alleged in the Georgian courts, and you face charges as a result of this, it is alleged that you abused your power in the way that you handled and repressed some protest demonstrations and also in the way you tried to intimidate, it is said, an opposition TV station. Now, those are charges that you face in Georgia. The Ukrainians have said that if you try to get back to Ukraine, they will then consider a Georgian extradition request to send you straight to Tbilisi to stand trial. So why don't you just miss out the middleman, face the music, and go to Tbilisi and make your case before a court?
Because I'm an active and very prominent Ukrainian politician. I'm a leader of a rapidly growing political party in Ukraine. I have lots of supporters in Ukraine, and I pledge Ukrainian people that will carry till the end the flag of the reforms, which I, together with other people, happen to symbolize there. That's first. Second, when you're talking about so-called charges, they not been recognized by any countries, other countries in the world. Interpol specifically refused to just start to issue a search warrant, the arrest warrant on me, because from the parliamentary elections, he happened to be the biggest private shareholder of Russian Gazprom, and this man got $2 billion for elections with specific mandate that was openly articulated both by Putin and Medvedev. He said, we want in Georgia the government that will try Saakashvili. Now, the government came in, they gave them money,
this is all extraordinarily complicated,
and then they started the cases, so nobody takes them seriously.
Well, it's all very complicated. People might struggle to get a grip on this, but one thing that people will understand is the phrase, what goes around comes around. And this man that you describe as a Russian oligarch, but in fact, of course, has Georgian citizenship, Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili, he has been your enemy for a number of years. When you were Premier of Georgia, you tried to strip him of his citizenship. And now here you sit as a man who's been stripped of his Ukrainian citizenship. You're a man who's played games in a very, very difficult region for a long time, and frankly, it's come back to bite you on the bum.
Let me make it very clear. Ivanishvili lost his citizenship automatically because he got another country's citizenship, and that's how the law in Georgia is. But however, nobody has expelled him from the country, unlike what Poroshenko did against me. And second, we specifically changed law because he was back then leader of one of the biggest opposition parties, specially changed law for him and allowed foreign nationals from European Union, quite an exception, to run for elected office in Georgia. We specifically accommodated law to safeguard the democracy. So these are two radically different cases. I wish Poroshenko had done it. If Poroshenko does the same thing to me as I did to Ivanishvili, I would be more than happy. If he allows me into the country legally and allows me to run in the elections, then he can not even keep even if it's without citizenship.
All right.
So these are not the comparisons.
We'll get to Ukrainian politics in just a second.
I wasn't afraid of Ivanishvili as a competition. I never was afraid despite his money, and Poroshenko is afraid of me. And when you said, is it the end of a political career of Saakashvili? No, I think it's end or beginning of the end of political career of not only President Poroshenko, who showed extreme weakness by doing that, extreme negligence of the law, and looks in the eyes of Ukrainians like a very, very bad, but also very weak politician, but also of the oligarchic system in Ukraine, which has been destroyed Ukraine, has been destroying Ukraine for the last 25 years.
Yeah, this is very interesting because you now condemn Poroshenko, describe him as the friend of the oligarchs, a man who has completely failed Ukraine. Of course, he was your great friend. I mean, you were at college together. He was the man who invited you in 2015 to come to Ukraine, encouraged you to take citizenship, and then offered you the appointment as governor of the Odessa region. Have you paused for a moment of sort of self-reflection to wonder why Poroshenko now regards you as extremely bad news? Like so many other people in your career, you seem to have made an awful lot of enemies, and the most recent one, of course, is Mr. Poroshenko himself.
Look, you were exact when you said that I studied in Ukraine. I spent altogether 13 years of my life in Ukraine, and I was not invited to Ukraine by Poroshenko. Basically, we came almost at the same time to study into Ukraine from other countries. He came from Moldova, I came from Georgia. Now, I was, as a student, part of the first Ukrainian revolution. Then I, together with leaders of first Maidan, was participating in organizing the first Maidan. I was there on the second Maidan, and I stayed after second Maidan, even if Yanukovych tried to do the same to me as Poroshenko is doing now, to declare me persona non grata. And that's so I'm essential part of Ukrainian landscape and history for the last at least 20-25 years.
But you're not Ukrainian, you're Georgian.
I am Georgian, I'm proud to be Georgian, but you know, there are so much intertwined stories of Georgians and Ukrainians. There were Ukrainians fighting for Georgia in the 90s against Russian aggression. There are hundreds of Georgian officers now on the front, on the Eastern Front. There are many people with Georgian origin in Ukrainian political spectrum, and there is a Ukrainian minister in Georgian government. So I mean, if you just talk about ethnicity, these countries are interconnected, and you are exactly right. I've got lots of enemies, but I would be very unhappy if oligarchs had considered me as their friend. Now, what we are getting in all these countries is that oligarchs took over, and you know, things are not as they look, because Georgia is controlled by one oligarch, Moldova is controlled by another, Ukraine is controlled by several oligarchs that control the entire government and more than 70% of Ukrainians' GDP, and then Western politicians come, shake hands of, in case of Moldova, Georgia, prime ministers, ministers, in case of Ukraine, of ministers, and then basically they are not what they are. In fact, they are not in charge of the countries. Okay. So who is in charge of those countries are oligarchs. Let's stop pretending.
Let's agree that I need to ask you some questions or we won't get anywhere. Let's agree that you have lots of enemies in Ukraine. Sure. You call them oligarchs and kleptocrats. But the problem for you is that you went to Ukraine, and to Odessa in particular, saying you were going to root out corruption, you were going to clean up that region. You failed to do that because corruption clearly was still prevalent when you were there. And the problem is that many Ukrainians felt you weren't really focused on doing your job in Odessa. You were too busy playing politics in Kiev because you wanted the top job for yourself of Prime Minister. And to quote the actual Prime Minister, Mr. Yatsenyuk, at one particular stormy meeting with you, he said, and I'm quoting, "You are nothing but a travelling showman and a blabbermouth. You were invited into this country to promote reform, not to engage in politicking." That was your mistake.
Look, I've been offered 3 times on 3 occasions by President Poroshenko to become Prime Minister of Ukraine, and I declined. And it's a well-known fact. I declined it because I thought that in present circumstances, when they just wanted me for facade, because that was the moment when I first became extremely popular in Ukraine, they thought they would sell it to their population as real reforms, while they had parliamentary majority which obviously didn't want the reforms. And when I went to from the very beginning, you rightly said that I stood by Poroshenko's side. I don't regret it, because basically things were starting well. Things were starting well after Maidan. We adopted anti-corruption laws. We created National Anti-Corruption Bureau, and I was at the helms of creating that bureau together with the others. Lots of young, idealistic Ukrainians came to different positions into the government. And indeed, I went to Odessa as part of a deal to clean up the most corrupt, but also the most strategically important, arguably, region of Ukraine, and also a region that was strongly destabilized by separatists and movements and Moscow intrusion. And I went there specifically with clear promise from Poroshenko that he would help me to clean up there by also changing some laws in Kiev, and by making customs more transparent, by making the tax system better. And instead, we got exactly the opposite. The very moment when I confronted the clans, and I think we delivered on the fact that customs in Odessa, which is the most important customs on Ukraine, for all the time I was there, was absolutely clean, and that's well-known fact. then we created the best public services hall in Ukraine. I basically pushed the central government for the first time in 40 years to build a very important strategic road to restore it, because it was the worst road in Europe. We had some achievements, but I couldn't change the fundamentals.
You're making a
fundamentals was when it came to real things, to changing the laws, allowing these changes to be reversible, Poroshenko played the opposite side. He went to the other side. That was the main reason when I said, and then it's like, you quoted Yatsenyuk, but it's 2 days ago they charged a big anti-corruption activist, Vitaly Shabunin. So another wave of cracking down on pro-democracy and pro-anti-corruption fighters. And you know what was the things that government people are saying? You are anti-corruption fighter. Why we have corruption if you are so successful? So they're blaming us for their vices. They're blaming us because for them willing to kill their country. We are doing our best. These young Ukrainians are doing their best, and they turn around and say, we'll prosecute you, and by the way, you failed to tackle corruption issue.
The problem is your narrative has a lot of holes in it, and one of your big holes is that you say you're Mr. Clean, you were going to clean out the stables in Ukraine, and Poroshenko stopped you, and he stopped you because he's frightened of you, because you and the political movement that you have founded in Ukraine, the movement of new forces, you say that Poroshenko is very frightened of it. Why would he be frightened? I'm sure you've seen the latest opinion polls. You and your party in Ukraine stand at the grand total of 2%. So why would Mr. Poroshenko be frightened of you now?
No, these are two different things. These are two different things. Me, I'm still one of 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 most popular politicians in Ukraine. Nobody argues about that. I have very high recognition, and there are periods when I'm the most popular. There are periods when I'm third or fourth.
I don't doubt, Mr. Saakashvili, you have high recognition. I'll grant you that. But whether you have popularity is another question altogether.
Well, you can see the polls, and it's obviously I'm one of the most popular politicians in Ukraine. However, with political party, I create political party with almost total blockage of media, and basically the situation when you had the situation, and it was very obvious that, for instance, they registered absolutely the same under the same name, Ministry of Justice of Ukraine, registered another political party. Usual trick when they are afraid of somebody. And despite this thing, these young people are raising. But it's not just a matter of one party. I think overall in Ukraine there is a wave of all normal new generation of Ukrainians raising up. And my idea is I'm not asking for positions for myself. I see myself as an icebreaker. We need to allow these people to break through the hurdles that oligarchs had created. Now look, Ukraine is a world record holder for the lowest growth of GDP for the last 25 years. I'm right now in Poland. Poland and Ukraine started in the same conditions. And we look where Poland is now and where Ukraine had stayed. There are two essential differences between Poland and Ukraine. Poland has no oligarchs and Poland has no corruption. Ukraine is an amazing nation, amazing people, very talented, very hardworking, amazing resources. Arguably, they had much more resources, also human ones, from the very beginning than Poland. They were just very unlucky with their political class. And this political class showed its final face and ugly face now with this last moves, also against me, but also other activists.
Do you, let's look at the bigger picture. Do you ever worry that in the course of your career, and I'm thinking about Georgia as well as Ukraine, you have sowed such chaos? I'm thinking, for example, of your decision to go to war with Vladimir Putin in 2008 in Georgia, and, of course, your decision now to essentially declare political war on President Poroshenko, whom you accuse of being a friend of crooks, bandits and oligarchs. Are you not concerned that in sowing this chaos in two crucial countries, first Georgia, then Ukraine, you're inadvertently doing the work of Vladimir Putin?
Look, I think what Poroshenko did, this is exactly the best thing that he could give to Putin. Putin now has such a pleasure from this. He said that's the point to be proven. That's very unfortunate. Medvedev was the first foreign politician to respond to it and to respond to Poroshenko's move very positively, basically with great joy. And that's basically you don't need any extra proofs. But now look, you said I saw the chaos in Georgia. Under my leadership, Georgia's GDP grew 4 times. Georgia went up from 127th place in terms of ease of doing business to being number 9 in the world. We've been world's #1 reformer for 5 or 6 years in a row of my leadership. We enjoyed double-digit growth, very substantial time of my leadership.
Yeah, but you also went to war with Vladimir Putin.
We created a new statehood, a very successful one, and role model for the entire region.
Yeah, well,
that's why Ukrainians are supporting me.
Well, you can quote GDP figures, and I accept the GDP improvement, but you can also point to the fact you took a risk. You thought you could stand up to Vladimir Putin, and you failed. You got involved in a conflict which you couldn't possibly win, and the consequences of that are still being felt in Georgia and Ukraine today. That's your legacy.
Stephen, I've been on your show several times. Sometimes Russians say I'm crazy, but I think you know that I'm not crazy. I would never be crazy to go and confront Russia. No. It's just like blaming Ukraine that Russians attacked them. It's blaming us that we attacked, that we had victim behavior, we got attacked. We got attacked because we were successful. But despite the Russian attack, Georgia withstood that back then, and basically the fastest development, strangely, but happened after 2008. After world financial crisis and after Russian attack, the Georgian cities mushroomed, and jobs went up, and Georgia went up on every international benchmarks and ratings, and that's happened on my watch. So that's exactly, Ukrainians are aware of that, and Ukrainians would like to have the repetition of the same thing in Ukraine. Ukraine deserves much better life. Ukrainians are heroic. We should not blame Ukrainians that they got attacked. They get attacked every day. Is it them to be blamed? But they're heroically standing their grounds and protecting their country, by the way, together with many Georgians that came to fight alongside Ukrainians as well.
Before we end, I just want to ask you a quick question about Donald Trump and the way that the region, your region, sees Donald Trump. You made a very great point when Trump won in 2016 of talking about your association with Donald Trump. You put up, or at least you posted on the internet, posters of you and Trump back in 2012, shaking hands, and it appeared to be doing a deal to build a Trump Tower in Georgia, which of course never got built. But you claimed to be a friend of his, and you criticized President Poroshenko for siding with Hillary Clinton. But as you look at the region today, do you really think that being close to Donald Trump is in the interests of Ukraine or indeed Georgia, given his relationship or his ambition to build a warmer, better relationship with Russia?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud of the project we were doing in Georgia, and it hadn't got built because I left the government. It was for the last 5 years since I left, as I said, Georgia's GDP quadrupled on my watch, and under this government of Russian oligarch Ivanishvili, basically it's not even in dollar figures, it's less than it was under my presidency. So it's a disaster, and basically almost all big projects have stopped, and Trump Tower has stopped as well. Well, but the project was great.
But hang on, isn't the truth that Donald Trump is a bit of a disaster for Ukraine? Isn't that the truth?
Look, the United States have been very supportive of Ukraine's territorial integrity, and I think that had not changed. There was travel of Vice Presidents recently to Georgia and Tillerson here, and they were very supportive. And the Ukrainian nation and Georgian nation deserve all the support of the world for what they are achieving, and I don't think that's changing with this administration. I would not exaggerate I don't really think, several things what Donald Trump stands for. Basically, it's not good for Russia. He stands for energy independence of America, not good for Russia. Stronger Russian-American military, not good for Russia. Now Americans are starting to talk, and I was lobbying for it in Congress, for little weapons for Ukraine to defend itself, not good for Russia. So things are moving in the right direction.
If we speak to you again in 1 year from now, will you be in politics or in prison?
Well, if I am in prison, you won't be in position to speak to me. So hopefully you'll be in position to speak with me. But in the end, we'll win, and you'll see that everything I said will come true.
We have to end there. Mikhail Saakashvili, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Let's hope we can speak again in 1 year.
Indeed. Thank you very much.